I once knew a woman who was desperate. She had bills piling up on her kitchen table like a paper mountain threatening to collapse her entire world. She came to me with tears in her eyes and said, "Florence, I've tried everything. Prayer, affirmations, positive thinking. Nothing works." I looked at her with all the love in my heart and said, "Have you tried writing down the exact amount you desire and placing it under your pillow before you sleep?" She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. But here's what I need you to understand right now, at this very moment. As you're listening to these words, there is an invisible law operating in this universe that most people die never knowing about, and it has absolutely nothing to do with luck, privilege, or being special. It works for anyone who learns its language. That woman I just mentioned, she went home that night, wrote down a specific number on a piece of paper, $37,000, the exact amount she needed to clear every debt and start fresh. And she placed it under her pillow. But here's the part most people miss. She didn't just write it down and hope, she did something else. Something I'm going to teach you today. Something that activates a frequency in the invisible realm that must, by spiritual law, manifest in the visible world. 3 weeks later, she received a phone call. A distant relative she hadn't spoken to in years had passed away and left her, specifically her, an inheritance. Can you guess the amount? $37,412. Now, I can already hear some of you thinking, "That's just coincidence, Florence." And to that, I say this with all the tenderness and fire in my soul. There are no coincidences in a universe governed by law. There is only cause and effect. There is only consciousness and its perfect reflection in form. What I'm about to share with you isn't superstition. It isn't magic in the fantasy sense. It's the most practical, scientific, spiritual truth you'll ever encounter. And if you stay with me until the end of this conversation, you will never see money, abundance, or your own power the same way again. Your subconscious mind is listening right now. It's recording every word, every feeling, every image I paint for you. And that's exactly where transformation begins. Let me tell you something about numbers that will change how you see everything. Numbers aren't just symbols we use to count things. They're vibrational frequencies. They carry power. They speak a language that your subconscious mind understands perfectly, even when your conscious mind is filled with doubt and fear. When I teach you to place a specific number under your pillow, I'm not teaching you folk magic. I'm teaching you how to program your subconscious mind while it's in its most receptive state, during sleep, to become a magnet for that exact vibration. Think about this for a moment. Every single night, you lay your head down on your pillow and drift into sleep. For 6, 7, 8 hours, your conscious mind, the part of you that worries and doubts and argues with reality, goes offline. And what remains? Your subconscious mind, wide awake, incredibly powerful, and in direct communication with the infinite intelligence that governs all creation. This is your doorway. This is your secret passage to manifestation. And most people waste it by falling asleep with worry, with fear, with the television playing stories of disaster and limitation. But you're not going to do that anymore, because I'm going to teach you exactly what I've taught thousands of people over the years. People who've manifested stunning reversals of fortune, unexpected money, miraculous opportunities, and live so abundant they barely recognize their former struggling selves. The number you write down isn't just a wish, it's a command. It's a declaration to the universe that you are claiming what is already yours in the invisible realm of infinite supply. And 37 million, or 37,000, or whatever 37 means to you, this number carries a special frequency, a vibrational signature that aligns with sudden manifestation and divine compensation. You see, the universe doesn't respond to begging. It doesn't reward desperation. It answers conviction. When you declare $37 million, you're not asking permission from some distant deity who might or might not grant your request. You're activating a law as reliable as gravity. You're speaking the language that moves mountains and parts seas. I've watched people whisper their desires like secrets they're ashamed of, and then wonder why nothing changes. But the ones who transform their lives, they speak with authority. They don't say, "I hope," or "maybe someday," or "if I'm worthy enough." They say, "It is mine. It is done. Thank you for what is already accomplished." Now, let me tell you something that might shake you awake. Your current bank account is not reality. It's just a temporary reflection of old thoughts, old beliefs, old patterns. It's yesterday's consciousness made visible. That's all it is. The real reality, the truth that sets you free, exists in the invisible realm where all things already are. In that place, there is no lack, there is no limitation, there is only infinite abundance waiting for you to claim it. Think about this. Before the oak tree appears, there's an acorn. But before the acorn, there's an invisible pattern, a divine blueprint that contains the entire tree, every branch, every leaf. The same is true for your wealth. Before the money appears in your physical account, it exists as a perfect idea in divine mind. Your job isn't to create it from nothing. Your job is to align yourself with what already is. This is why worry is so destructive. When you worry about money, you're watering the wrong seeds. You're giving life to lack instead of abundance. You're declaring not enough instead of more than enough. And the universe, which is always listening, always responding, says yes, your word is law, and reflects that consciousness back to you. This is why I tell everyone who comes to me in financial distress, stop fighting the lack. Stop wrestling with the empty bank account. Stop arguing with the bills. You cannot solve a problem by giving it all your attention and emotion. You're just feeding it, making it bigger, giving it more power in your world. Instead, turn completely away from it. Refuse to give it the energy of your fear. This doesn't mean ignoring practical responsibilities. Pay your bills with peace, not panic. Handle your affairs with calm, not crisis. But don't sit and stare at your lack all day. Don't rehearse poverty in your mind. Don't tell everyone who will listen how broke you are. I've watched people talk themselves into poverty. They wake up and immediately start the litany. I can't afford this. I'll never have enough. Money is so tight. I'm always behind. They speak these words casually, unconsciously, not realizing they're placing orders with the universe. Every statement is a decree. Every complaint is a prayer, an invocation. And the law doesn't judge whether your words are good for you. It simply says, so be it, and makes it so. One woman came to me years ago, utterly convinced she was cursed with poverty. She had a good job, no major debts, yet she always ended each month with nothing. I listened to her for 10 minutes and I heard the problem. Every other sentence was about lack. I can't afford to go out. I never have extra money. I'm always just scraping by. She had hypnotized herself into poverty through her own words. I gave her one instruction: stop speaking lack. For 30 days, she was not allowed to say anything negative about money. If she couldn't say something prosperous, she was to say nothing at all. She thought I was crazy, but she was desperate enough to try. The first week was torture for her. She had to catch herself dozens of times a day. She realized how much of her conversation revolved around complaining about money, but she persisted. And by the end of the month, something had shifted. Not just in her bank account, though that had improved, but in her entire energy. She felt lighter, more expectant, open to possibilities she had been blind to before. And then, the most remarkable thing happened. Within days, she received a call from a former colleague. A project had fallen through, and they needed someone with her exact expertise. The timeline was flexible. The pay was more than fair. It felt, she told me later, like the universe had been waiting for her to simply stop pushing. This is what I mean when I speak of non-resistance. You see, most of us have been taught that we must force our way through life, that struggle equals effort, and effort equals worthiness. We believe that if we're not exhausted, we haven't tried hard enough. If it comes easily, it can't be valuable. But this is the lie that keeps us locked in limitation. The spiritual law works differently. It works through attraction, not pursuit, through alignment, not force. When you resist what is, you create a wall between yourself and your good. When you accept what is not as permanent, but as present, you create a doorway. Acceptance is not defeat, it is strategy. Let me be clear. I am not asking you to become passive. I am not suggesting you abandon your desires or stop taking action. What I am suggesting is that you change the quality of your action, that you move from desperation to expectation, from grasping to receiving. There is a vast difference between the two. When you grasp, you tell the universe you don't believe it will provide. When you receive, you acknowledge that provision is already on its way. One is rooted in fear, the other in faith. And faith, my dear friend, is not belief without evidence. Faith is knowing that the evidence is forming, even when you cannot yet see it. Faith is planting a seed and not digging it up every day to check its progress. You plant it, you water it, you trust it. This is how all great things come into being. Not through force, but through faithful expectation. Not through worry, but through wonder. I remember a woman who came to me, her face drawn with anxiety. She said, "I've been affirming for weeks that my perfect home is coming to me, but I keep worrying that someone else will take it first. Why isn't it working?" I smiled gently and said, "My dear, you cannot hold the vision of your answered prayer in one hand while clutching fear in the other. Your worry is the very thing blocking your demonstration. You see, the universe responds not to your words alone, but to the feeling behind them. When you affirm abundance while feeling lack, you are speaking two languages at once, and confusion cannot bring clarity into form. This is why I always say, your word is your wand, but only when it carries the weight of conviction. Let me be very clear about something that trips up so many seekers. There is a vast difference between wishing and knowing. Wishing says, I hope this comes true. Knowing says, it is already done. Wishing keeps you in a state of longing. Knowing places you in a state of receiving. The spiritual law doesn't reward hope, it rewards expectancy. Think of it this way, when you plant a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up every day to see if it's growing. You don't stand over it with clenched fists, demanding it sprout. You water it, you give it sunlight, and you trust the intelligence within that seed to do what it was designed to do. Your word is that seed. Once spoken with faith, your only job is to prepare the soil of your consciousness to receive its harvest. I've watched people sabotage their own demonstrations time and time again by trying to control the how. They say, I want this outcome, but only if it comes through this door, in this way, at this exact time. But spirit is infinitely more creative than your limited reasoning mind. The how is none of your business. Your business is the what and the why. The universe handles the delivery method. There was a man who desperately wanted a new position. He affirmed daily, my right work, in my right place, with my right pay. But he insisted it must come through one particular company. He sent application after application, each one ignored. Then one day, he surrendered. He said, Infinite intelligence, I trust you to bring this to me in the perfect way. Within a week, a former colleague called him out of the blue with an opportunity he'd never considered. Better pay, better location, better everything. The door he was knocking on was locked, but the window beside it had been open all along. Now, I want to talk to you about something that most people get completely backwards: the timing of things. We live in a world that worships speed. Instant coffee, instant messaging, instant results. And when our demonstration doesn't show up on our timeline, we think we've failed. We think God has forgotten us. We think the universe isn't listening. But here's what I've learned through years of watching this law in action. There is never a delay in the divine plan. The delay is always in our acceptance. The universe isn't withholding from you. You're withholding from yourself through doubt, through fear, through that persistent looking back at what hasn't worked before. I once worked with a woman who wanted to sell her house. She needed to sell it quickly because she was moving across the country for a wonderful new opportunity. Month after month, no buyers. The real estate agent kept bringing lower and lower offers. Her friends told her to take whatever she could get. The pressure was mounting. She came to me in tears, saying, Why isn't this working? I've been affirming. I've been declaring. Where is my buyer? I asked her one simple question. Are you grateful for the house you haven't sold yet? She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Grateful? It's become a burden. And there was the block. She was resenting the very thing she was trying to bless into someone else's hands. I told her to walk through that house every single day and bless it. Thank it for sheltering her. Thank it for the memories. Thank it for being the perfect home for its next owner, whoever that would be. Most importantly, I told her to stop checking the real estate listings, stop calculating her losses, stop telling everyone about the house that wouldn't sell. And here's what happened. Within 1 week, she got a call. A couple who'd been circling for months suddenly made an offer. Not just any offer, the exact amount she'd been asking for. They didn't haggle. They didn't negotiate. They simply said yes. When she called to tell me, she was crying. Not because of the money, but because she finally understood. The house wasn't stuck. She was. The moment she let go, the universe could move. This is the great paradox, isn't it? We think holding on keeps us safe. We think worrying proves we care. We think control is the same thing as faith. But true faith, the kind that actually moves mountains and opens doors, requires the one thing most of us refuse to give: surrender. Not the surrender of defeat, not the collapse into hopelessness, but the surrender that says, I've done my part, I've planted the seed, now I trust the soil to do its work. That kind of surrender is active, not passive. It's powerful, not weak. It's the difference between a clenched fist and an open hand. Think about a farmer. He doesn't dig up his seeds every morning to check if they're growing. He doesn't stand in the field yelling at the ground to hurry up. He plants, he waters, and then he goes about his business. He trusts the process. He knows the soil has intelligence. He knows the seed knows what to do. And because he trusts, the harvest comes. But what do? We plant our desires, our prayers, our intentions, and then we immediately start digging them up. Is it working? Is anything happening? Maybe I should try something else. Maybe I should worry a little more. Just to make sure the universe knows this is important. We treat the invisible world like it's hard of hearing, like it needs us to shout and repeat ourselves, and prove how badly we want something. But here's what I've learned. The invisible world doesn't respond to volume. It responds to conviction. It doesn't hear your words, it reads your vibration. And when you're constantly checking, constantly doubting, constantly asking, is it working yet? You're broadcasting the frequency of lack, not faith. Think of it like planting a seed. You don't dig it up every day to see if it's growing. You don't stand over it with a magnifying glass, measuring the roots, questioning whether you planted it correctly. You water it, you give it sunlight, and then you trust the process that's been working since the beginning of time. The seed knows what to do. Your job isn't to micromanage the miracle, it's to provide the conditions and then get out of the way. This is where most people lose the game. They plant the seed of their desire with a prayer or affirmation. They water it for a day, maybe two. And then, they start digging. Let me just check if anything's happening. Let me just peek at my bank account one more time. Let me just see if he's called yet. And every time you dig up that seed to inspect it, you damage the very roots that were beginning to form. I watch people do this with money constantly. They'll say their affirmations in the morning. I am prosperous. Abundance flows to me easily. Beautiful. But by noon, they're checking their account balance with a knot in their stomach. By evening, they're complaining to a friend about how broke they are. By night, they're lying awake, calculating exactly how many days until disaster strikes. That's not faith. That's fear wearing a positive thinking costume. Real faith is boring. It doesn't give you much to do. It doesn't give you much to worry about. It simply asks you to hold steady while the invisible becomes visible, to water your seed and walk away, to speak your word and then trust it to do what words do in the spiritual realm create. I knew a woman who understood this perfectly. She needed money desperately, but instead of obsessing over her empty mailbox, she spent her days acting as if prosperity was already hers. Not in a fake, manifesting way, in a genuine, peaceful way. She cleaned her house like someone who had the luxury of time. She dressed beautifully even though no one would see her. She tithed from the little she had. And when people asked if she was worried, she'd smile and say, "Why would I be? It's already done." 3 weeks later, money came from a source she'd completely forgotten about. Not because she manifested it through technique, but because she stopped blocking it with doubt. Now, here's where most people get tripped up. They think surrender means giving up. It doesn't. Surrender means giving over. You're not abandoning the desire. You're releasing the death grip that's choking the life out of it. Think of it like holding a bird. If you squeeze too tight, you crush it. If you open your hand completely, it might fly away. But if you hold it gently, with an open palm, it rests there peacefully. That's the energy of surrender. I learned this lesson the hard way through my own desperation. Years ago, I was so worried about a specific outcome that I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up at 3 a.m, mentally rehearsing scenarios, trying to control every variable. And you know what happened? Nothing. Absolutely nothing moved forward. Then one day, I was so exhausted from the mental gymnastics that I just stopped. I said out loud, "Fine. I can't do this anymore. I'm handing it over." And I meant it. Not in a petulant, giving up way, but in a genuine, I trust there's something bigger than my anxiety way. Within 48 hours, the thing I'd been forcing for months suddenly shifted. The person called. The door opened. The solution appeared. Not because I finally said the right affirmation, but because I finally got out of the way. Your desperation is not proof of your desire, it's proof of your doubt. When you truly believe something is yours, you don't desperately grasp at it. You prepare for it. You make room for it. You act like someone who already has it. I once knew a man who wanted to meet his life partner. He'd been alone for years, and the loneliness was eating him alive. Every date felt like an audition. Every conversation felt like a test he might fail. And of course, nothing worked. He was radiating need, and need repels. Because here's what most people don't understand about desire and manifestation. Desperation and desire feel similar on the surface, but energetically, they're opposites. Desire says, I would love this. Desperation says, I'll die without this. One is magnetic, the other is repellent. When you're desperate, you're actually affirming lack. Every anxious thought, every checking behavior, every why hasn't it happened yet, is a statement to the universe that says, I don't have it and I'm terrified I never will. And the universe, being the perfect mirror it is, reflects that exact frequency back to you. I've watched people sabotage their greatest desires through sheer force of anxiety. A woman who wanted a relationship so badly that she interrogated every date about their intentions within the first hour. A man who wanted financial success so intensely that he couldn't stop talking about how broke he was, thereby ensuring everyone around him saw him only as broke. An artist who craved recognition but was so hungry for validation that her work reeked of people-pleasing rather than authentic expression. They were all focused on their desire, yes. But focus isn't enough. The quality of that focus matters enormously. Think of it like this. When you plant a seed in soil, you don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You don't stand over it with a flashlight at midnight, demanding to see progress. You water it, you give it sun, and then you trust the process. You know the seed contains everything it needs to become the plant. Your job isn't to make it grow through force of will. Your job is to provide the right conditions and then get out of the way. But so many of us treat our desires like that paranoid gardener, constantly digging up the seed to check on it, actually preventing the very growth we're desperate to see. We check our bank accounts 17 times a day when we're trying to manifest money. We refresh our inbox obsessively when we're waiting for an important message. We monitor our phones like security guards when we want someone to call. And every single time we check, we're sending the signal. It's not here yet. It's still missing. I'm still lacking. That's the checking energy I'm talking about. And it's absolutely toxic to manifestation. Because every time you check, you're essentially placing a new order with the universe that contradicts your original order. You're saying, where is it? And the universe responds to that vibration, the vibration of absence, of waiting, of incompleteness. Think of it like this. Imagine you plant a seed in your garden. You've planted it with care, with intention, with faith. Now, if every single day you dig up that seed to check if it's sprouting yet, what happens? You kill it. You disrupt the natural process. You prevent the very growth you're so anxious to see. Manifestation works the same way. Once you've planted your intention, once you've claimed it in consciousness, once you've felt the reality of it as already done, your job is to leave it alone. Not because you're passive, not because you're disengaged, but because you're truly, deeply confident that it's handled. The master gardener doesn't dig up seeds every day. She waters, she tends, she creates the right conditions, and then she trusts the intelligence of nature to do its work. You do the same with your desires. You hold the vision, you maintain the feeling, you align your actions with the assumption that it's done. And then you let the universe handle the delivery method. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. But Florence, how do I know the difference between trusting and just being lazy? How do I know when to take action and when to let go? Beautiful question. And here's your answer. Inspired action feels light. It feels natural. It feels like the next logical step in a journey you're already on. You're not forcing, you're not straining, you're not acting from fear or lack. Forced action feels heavy. It's driven by anxiety, by the need to make something happen because you don't trust that it will happen on its own. When you're living from the end, action becomes effortless. Opportunities appear, doors open, people show up, and you simply walk through them, because you already know where you're going. You're not desperately knocking on every door, hoping one will open. You're the person who walks up to the right door just as it swings open because you expected it to. That's what it means to live as if. That's what it means to dwell in the wish fulfilled. You're not pretending. You're not faking it. You're aligning yourself with the frequency of your desire so completely that the external world has no choice but to reflect it back to you. Because, and I cannot stress this enough, your external world is always, always a reflection of your internal world. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, but Florence, I've been visualizing, I've been affirming, I've been trying to feel good, and nothing's happening. Here's what I want you to understand. The lag time between your internal shift and the external manifestation is where most people lose faith. They plant the seed, and 3 days later they're digging it up to see if it's growing. You wouldn't do that with a garden, would you? You wouldn't plant a tomato seed on Monday and throw a tantrum on Thursday because you don't see tomatoes yet. You trust the process. You water the soil. You give it sunlight. You know beyond a shadow of a doubt that if you do your part, nature will do hers. The same is true for your desires. The moment you truly claim something in consciousness, the moment you accept it as yours, the universe begins orchestrating everything necessary to bring it into form. But it doesn't always happen on your timeline. It happens on divine timing, which is always perfect. And let me be clear, divine timing doesn't mean never. It means when all the pieces are aligned. It means when you're energetically ready to receive it. It means when the path has been cleared of obstacles you can't even see yet. I've watched people sabotage their own manifestations by getting impatient. They ask, they receive the inner knowing, they start seeing signs, and then they panic. They think, it's taking too long, and they flip back into doubt. And doubt, my dear, slams the door shut on your good. Faith is not a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. It's waking up every morning and saying, I still believe. Even though I can't see it yet, I know it's on its way. It's refusing to let circumstances dictate your inner state. Because here's the truth. Circumstances are old news. They're the result of yesterday's thinking. If you want to change your circumstances, you've got to change your thinking today and then hold that new thought steady until the outer world catches up. And let me tell you that holding steady part, that's where most people stumble. They affirm for a day, maybe a week, and when they don't see instant results, they throw up their hands and say, see, I knew it wouldn't work. But you wouldn't plant a seed in the ground on Monday and dig it up on Wednesday to see why it hasn't become a tree yet, would you? Of course not. You'd water it, give it sunlight, and trust the process. You'd know that something is happening beneath the surface, even when you can't see it yet. Your thoughts work exactly the same way. Every positive thought you think, every time you redirect your attention from lack to abundance, from fear to faith, you're watering that seed. You're creating invisible roots in the spiritual realm that will eventually push through into visible form. The universe isn't withholding from you. It's not testing you or making you prove yourself worthy. It's simply responding to the signal you're consistently broadcasting. And if that signal keeps changing, if you're hopeful one moment and doubtful the next, grateful in the morning and complaining by afternoon, you're confusing the system. Think of it like tuning a radio. If you keep turning the dial back and forth, you'll never get a clear station. You've got to find the frequency of your desire and stay there long enough for the music to come through crisp and clear. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but Florence, I've tried to think positively, I've tried to believe, and still nothing changes. And to that I say, check your subconscious beliefs. Because you can affirm abundance all day long with your conscious mind, but if your subconscious is running a program that says, people like me don't get to have that, or money is hard to come by, or I'm not the lucky type, well, that subconscious program is going to win every time. Your subconscious is like the soil your thoughts are planted in. If that soil is toxic with old limiting beliefs, even the best seeds won't grow properly. This is why doing the inner work matters so much. This is why you've got to dig up those old weeds of unworthiness, shame, and inherited limitation. How do you do that? You catch yourself in the act. You become a witness to your own thoughts. You pause before you speak. You notice the story you're telling yourself before you believe it. You feel the contraction in your body when you're about to agree with a limiting thought, and you choose differently. This is not about perfection. This is about awareness. And awareness, my dear friend, is the doorway to freedom. You don't need to wrestle your thoughts to the ground. You don't need to wage war against your own mind. You simply need to stop feeding the thoughts that diminish you. A thought without your agreement has no power. It's like a fire without oxygen. It simply goes out. And in that space, in that beautiful space where you're no longer hostage to every passing thought, something miraculous happens. Your true voice begins to emerge. Not the voice of fear, not the voice of conditioning, but the voice of your deeper knowing, the voice that has always known you were meant for more. This voice doesn't shout, it doesn't argue, it simply states truth, and when you hear it, something in you recognizes it. Something in you says yes. I am guided, I am provided for. The right opportunities come to me. I am exactly where I need to be. These aren't just pretty affirmations. These are recognitions of what is already true. And when you speak them, when you allow yourself to rest in them, your entire system begins to reorganize around them. Your body relaxes, your breath deepens, your perspective shifts. And from this shifted perspective, you see possibilities you couldn't see before. You take actions you wouldn't have taken before. You attract circumstances that match your new frequency. This is the power you've been looking for. Not the power to force, not the power to manipulate, but the power to align, the power to allow, the power to become a clear channel for the abundance that is always flowing. And here's what I want you to understand. This isn't magic. This isn't wishful thinking. This is simply how consciousness works. What you give your attention to grows. What you withdraw your attention from diminishes. It's really that simple. So today, right now, you have a choice. You can continue to give your power away to every fearful thought, every limiting belief, every voice that tells you you're not enough, or you can reclaim it. You can decide that you are the authority in your own life. You can decide that your word is law in your own consciousness.